What if I told you that the defining sound of the 80s was cobbled together by a producer who spent 70,000 pounds trying to make a record sound like a wet slap? That the band on the cover was effectively banned from their own recording sessions, and that the most dangerous song in England became a #1 hit because a radio DJ got offended by a record sleeve. Here's how Frankie went to Hollywood and not a single soul was relaxing. So the year is 1983. We're in Liverpool, a city that has spent the last 20 years trying to get over the Beatles. In the middle of this whole fever dream, there's a band called Frankie Goes to Hollywood. And the name comes from a headline about Frank Sinatra, but the band has nothing to do with the crooning. They're loud, they're lewd, led by a young dude named Holly Johnson who possesses a voice that sounds like a foghorn trying to seduce a chainsaw. So the band gets this spot on a TV show called The Tube. This is Channel 4. It's gritty, it's real. Frankie comes out wearing leather bonds and fetish gear. They play a song called Relax. Totally raw and messy. Sounds like a pub band mud wrestling with a drum machine. Watching this at home is a dude named Trevor Horn. And Trevor's a producer. Total perfectionist. It's the kind of guy who hears a pin drop and wonders if it was in the right key. So he sees the band, sees the leather, hears the song, and he thinks, you know what? I could probably do something with that. So he signs them to his new label, ZTT, gets them into the studio, and he tells them to play Relax, and they play it. He listens, he's rubbing his chin, and he tells them, you know what, it's not good enough. Tells them it sounds like a jingle, and he wants a freaking monster. He wants a track that sounds like the future crashing into a disco. And thus begins the most expensive game of musical chairs in history. Trevor decides that the band cannot play the song the way that he hears it in his head. The guitarist, Brian Nash, has only just learned to play. The bassist, Mark O'Toole, is enthusiastic but very loose, and Trevor wants tight. He wants robotic perfection that you could friggin' gap your spark plugs to. So he effectively fires the band from their own record. He sends them back to Liverpool, tells them to go and relax. And Trevor brings in the pros. He hires the Blockheads. They are Ian Dury's backing band, serious musicians. Norman Watt Roy is on the bass. The guys are total funk masters. And they set up, they play the song, and it sounds incredible. Sounds funky. Sounds like a hit record from '79. And Trevor hates it. It's too human, too loose. He wants it to sound like a machine. So he scraps the Blockheads version. Right there, you've got thousands of pounds down the drain. So he tries again. He builds a version using just the band, and it's a disaster. So he scraps that too. He is now 3 versions deep. He has spent weeks on one song, bleeding money. He calls in his theme, a group of musical technicians who live in the studio. There's Steve Lipson, a guitarist and engineer who can make a computer sing, Andy Richards, a keyboard wizard, JJ Jeselnik, a programmer who operates the Fairlight CMI. The Fairlight CMI, during this time, is a computer that costs as much as a house. Looks like a beige microwave attached to a piano. Has the processing power of a modern calculator, but in 1983, it's totally alien technology. It allows you to sample sounds. You can record a dog barking and play jingle bells with it. And Trevor loves that Fairlight. So they start building the 4th version of Relax. And they do not use a drummer. They pull in that good old Lynn drum machine that I'm always talking about when I talk about pop artists in the 80s. It goes thwack, thwack, thwack. Totally relentless. And it's the heartbeat of the song. And Trevor, of course, wants a bass line that doesn't just walk. He wants it to really just punch you in the stomach. So he samples an E note from a bass guitar. Just one note. Bonk. And he loads it into the machine. And he programs the rhythm. So it's not a guy playing a bass. It's a computer triggering a recording of a guy playing a bass for one note. And it is perfectly in time. Never gets tired. Never misses a beat. So now they need the texture. Andy Richards fires up a Roland Jupiter 8 synthesizer. Total beast of a machine. And Trevor tells him to make it sound like a massive orgasm. So Andy twists some knobs, creates the explosions you hear in the track, and the weird wet squelching noises. And Steve Lipson later confirms that the pissing sound in the background was just Andy playing around on the Jupiter 8. So they layer it in. It adds to the filth. The track is starting to take shape. Total wall of sound, very dense, heavy, but it needs a guitar. So Steve picks up the guitar, plugs it in, plays the rhythm part. Trevor hears it, he likes it, and he keeps it. They have spent 6 weeks on this one song. They have spent 70,000 pounds. And again, that's the cost of a very nice house in London at that time, 1983. So they spent a house on a song about doing it. And the only person from the band allowed in the room is Holly Johnson. They need his voice. He comes in at night, stands at the mic and sings. He barks. He yelps. Sounds like he's leading a riot in a dungeon. The rest of the band, they're in the pool. Literally. At one point, Trevor records the sound of the band members jumping into a swimming pool. Then he samples the splash, and the splash makes it into the song. And that is their contribution. They are the most expensive sound effect in pop history. So the song is finished, and it's a monster. It throbs and pulses. Sounds like nothing else on the radio. It is Relax. So now they need to sell this song. The label ZTT is run by Paul Morley. Paul is a former music journalist, totally pretentious, but he's brilliant. He treats the band like an art project. He decides that Frankie Goes to Hollywood isn't just a band, they're actually a full-blown movement. So he leans into the gay angle. Holly and Paul Rutherford are openly gay. In '83, this is not a small detail. It is a declaration of war. And Paul Morley decides to market them as sex, war, and religion. So he creates advertisements that look like propaganda. You got one ad featuring Paul in a sailor cap. Caption reads, "All nice boys love seamen." It's a pun so crude it loops back around to being genius. They need a video, so they hire Bernard Rose. He listens to the song, hears the squelching synths, hears the lyrics about sucking it. So he decides the video should be set in a gay S&M club. So they go to Wilton's Music Hall in London. Beautiful, decrepit old theater. They turn it into a dungeon, fill it with extras dressed in leather and chains, total drag queens, and there's a man dressed as a Roman emperor, and there's a tiger, a real tiger. They have to keep the tiger away from the Roman emperor because the tiger looks damn hungry. Holly's dressed in a white suit that looks like it was made from a quilt. Paul Rutherford is dancing with a laser beam. The extras are drunk out of their minds. The air smells like sawdust and poppers. So the video's done, and it's filthy. It features the band being accosted by Leathermen. The Roman emperor gives a thumbs down. The tiger growls. It's sent to the BBC. The BBC takes one look at it and practically calls the cops. They ban the video immediately. But the song is out. It's released in November of '83, and it does okay. Enters the charts at number 67, creeps up to number 35, and then stalls. Looks like it might be a flop. And then comes a glitch in the matrix. It's Thursday, January 5th, 1984. The band gets a slot on Top of the Pops, and this is the most important music show in the UK. If you're on Top of the Pops, you have officially made it. And they perform Relax, and it's electric. Holly stares down the camera like he wants to fight the entire British public. Kids watching at home lose their freaking minds. The song jumps to number 6. It is now Wednesday, January 11th, 1984. A DJ named Mike Reed is on Radio 1. He's hosting The Breakfast Show. This is the biggest radio show in the country. Everybody listens to it. Moms driving kids to school, truck drivers, nuns. So Mike picks up the single, looks at the sleeve. The artwork features a man and woman standing back to back, partially undressed. It is suggestive. Mike Reed does not like suggestive. Puts the record on, starts reading the lyrics. Gets to the line, "Relax, don't do it when you want to suck it to it." He stops, reads it again. Realizes what the song is about. It happens to not be about relaxing in a comfortable chair. So Mike Reed has had enough. He lifts the needle off the record. Scritch, dead air. He announces to the nation that he will not play this record ever again. Calls it completely obscene, overtly sexual. Throws a tantrum live on the air. And this is the moment that everything changes. The BBC supports him. 2 days later, they announce a total ban. Relax is forbidden. It cannot be played on Radio 1, cannot be played on TV, so it's completely erased from the airwaves. And this is the greatest gift anybody could have ever given the band. Why? Because if you tell a teenager that they cannot listen to a song because it is too dirty, they will sell their grandmother to buy a copy. The band becomes front page news. Banned, scream the tabloids. The song becomes a symbol of rebellion. But Paul Morley, the marketing genius, he's not apologizing. He prints t-shirts, big white t-shirts with black block letters. Frankie say relax. Frankie say war. Frankie say arm the unemployed. And suddenly, everybody is wearing these shirts. You can't walk down a street in London without seeing somebody's chest telling you to relax. The shirts become bigger than the band. The song rockets to number 1, stays there for 5 weeks, sells 2 million copies. So now the BBC is in a bit of a bind. They have a show, Top of the Pops, that counts down the top songs, and the number 1 is Relax, and they are not allowed to play it. So for 5 weeks, the number one slot is just a picture of the band while a different song plays in the background. They show a video of somebody else. It is awkward and hilarious. The silence is louder than the song. As a YouTuber, I could so relate with the BBC. But either way, commercial stations keep playing it. Nightclubs play it. You hear it coming out of every car window. The BBC band turned the hit into a phenomenon. And the band is now just so freaking huge. They need a follow-up. They need to prove that they're not just one-hit wonders. Trevor Horn goes back to the studio. He's got a song called Two Tribes, a song about nuclear war. It's bleak and aggressive. And Trevor decides to treat it with the same manic perfectionism. So he grabs Steve Lipson, grabs the Fairlight. The demo is trash. Sounds like kids playing. Trevor throws it out. He builds the track from the ground up. Programs a bass line that is impossible to play by a human being. On the record, the bass line drops an octave in the middle of the riff. Human can't do that, but a computer can. Steve Lipson programs a drum fill. It is a jazz fill. It sounds completely wrong for a dance track. Trevor hates it. Says, it's a jazz fill. And Steve says, but it's cool. So they keep it. Becomes one of the most iconic drum fills of the 80s. They hire an actor to impersonate Reagan, have him reading snippets from a civil defense pamphlet. If your grandmother or any other member of the family should die whilst in the shelter, put them outside. Totally chilling. Two Tribes comes out, goes straight to number one, stays there for 9 weeks. But at the same time, Relax starts climbing the charts again. For 2 weeks in the summer of '84, Frankie Goes to Hollywood holds the number one and number two spots on the UK singles chart. Last band to do that was, of course, the Beatles. And they released an album called Welcome to the Pleasure Dome, a double album, a monument to excess. And they spend months in that title track. Steve Lipson figures out a way to loop the tape so the song could go on forever. They make the song 13 minutes long. At one point, they're recording in the studio in Notting Hill. It's the morning after the Notting Hill Carnival. Streets are filled with trash. Cleanup crews are out. Trevor's like, hey, let's record that. So they hang the Neumann U87 mic out the studio window, record the sound of the street sweepers, the bottles clinking, distant hum of the city, and they put that into the song. So when you listen to Welcome to the Pleasure Dome, you're listening to the literal trash of London. The album sells millions. The band goes on tour. They're gods. But gravity happens to be a law for a reason. The band is totally exhausted. They hate each other. The guys who didn't play on the record are resentful of the guys who did. Holly Johnson's tired of being treated like a puppet. They try to make a second album. It costs even more money. And it sounds fine, but the magic's gone. The moment has passed. Public has moved on to the next shiny object. The Holly, the singer, decides to quit. He tells ZTT that he's leaving. ZTT points to his contract. The contract is very thick, and it effectively says that Holly belongs to ZTT until the heat death of the universe. What's even worse, it is a restraint of trade. This was like that non-compete that you get with employer agreements out here in the US. Basically says, you cannot go to any other label. You cannot be a solo act. If you want to go be a dishwasher in a restaurant, that's totally fine. But as far as music goes, only for ZTT. So Holly lawyers up. He sues, and it goes to the High Court. The judge is Mr. Justice Whitford. He's an old dude. He looks at the contract and at the pop stars and at the label, and he rules in favor of Holly. He calls the contract unreasonable, effectively setting Holly free. So the band dissolves. They burn for 2 years, spend enough money to bankrupt a small nation. But they managed to do some interesting things. They managed to terrify the BBC. They made a radio DJ have a nervous breakdown. Sold millions of t-shirts. And those shirts weren't just sold in the UK. I mean, they were all over the place. Instead of just making a hit record, they mugged the entire music industry, stole its wallet, and bought a Fairlight CMI with the cash. Like, subscribe. Thank you.